How does a club that came within 1 point of relegation to the Championship turn around and spend £237 million on 3 players in a single summer? That's the story of Tottenham Hotspur heading into the 26th Premier League season, a club that has completely reshaped its identity in the space of 5 months. In May, Spurs were staring at their first relegation since 1977. By August, they'd broken their transfer record twice in 24 hours and handed the keys to one of the most fearless, high-risk coaches in world football. This is the entire story of how Roberto De Zerbi is rebuilding Tottenham Hotspur from the ashes of a disastrous season, and why this genuinely isn't the same club anymore. To understand where Tottenham are now, you have to understand how close they came to catastrophe. The 2025-26 season was, by Sky Sports' own description, one of the most catastrophic campaigns in the club's modern history. Spurs lost 6 league games in a row for the first time ever and went winless in the league for the entirety of the 2026 calendar year heading into the run-in. They burned through 3 head coaches in a single season, starting under Thomas Frank before a brief and disastrous 44-day spell under Igor Tudor, who failed to win a single Premier League game in charge. On the 31st of March 2026, with Spurs sitting 1 point above the relegation zone and just 7 games left to save their season, the club turned to Roberto De Zerbi. It was a call laced with risk. The Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust immediately raised what they called serious and far-reaching concerns about the appointment, related to De Zerbi's past comments backing Mason Greenwood at Marseille. But sporting director Johan Lang had no hesitation, calling De Zerbi their #1 target and describing him as one of the most creative, forward-thinking coaches in world football. De Zerbi had 7 matches to save a 49-year top-flight streak. He delivered 3 wins and 2 draws from those final 7 fixtures, capped by a nervy, backs-to-the-wall 1-0 win over Everton on the final day of the season, João Palhinha scoring the goal that mattered. West Ham won 3-0 at London Stadium against Leeds on the very same afternoon, and it still wasn't enough, sending the Hammers down to the Championship with 39 points, a tally that would usually guarantee safety in almost any other modern season. Tottenham survived in 17th place on 41 points, level with the previous season's finish, but alive. It was, by any measure, an escape rather than a foundation, and that is precisely why what happened next matters so much. So who exactly is the man tasked with dragging Tottenham from relegation fodder to Premier League contenders? Roberto De Zerbi's coaching journey is one of the most distinctive in modern football, built entirely on a single, uncompromising idea: draw the opponent in, then destroy them in the space they leave behind. It began at Sassuolo, the unfashionable Italy Serie A club that De Zerbi turned into a genuine headache for Italy's giants. His Sassuolo sides were built on press-baiting build-up play, with his center-backs and goalkeeper holding the ball for uncomfortably long periods, specifically to lure opposition forwards into committing to a high press. Once that trap was set, his double pivot would drop deep alongside the defense, manufacturing overloads that dragged the opposition's midfield completely out of shape, before a sudden vertical pass would break through multiple lines in one motion to find attackers like Domenico Berardi in space. It was high risk, particularly against the physical vertical sides of Serie A, but it turned Sassuolo into a genuine headache for Juventus, Inter, and Milan, and it turned Berardi, Raspadori, Manuel Locatelli, and Jeremy Boga into 4 of the league's most talked about definitive attacking and midfield talents. From there, De Zerbi took his idea somewhere far more chaotic: Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine in 2021. The football landscape around him was upended almost immediately by war, but on the pitch, De Zerbi built one of the most aggressive possession systems in Europe, baiting opposition presses even deeper in his own half, and relying on razor-sharp third-man combinations to spring players like Mykhailo Mudryk and Manor Solomon into space behind disorganized defenses. It was enough to have Shakhtar competing at the top of the Ukrainian league before the season was left unfinished, and it was enough to convince Brighton and Hove Albion that De Zerbi was their man in September 2022, succeeding Graham Potter. Brighton is where the wider footballing world properly discovered De Zerbi. Over 2 seasons on the South Coast, De Zerbi turned the Seagulls into arguably the most stylistically distinct team outside the traditional Big Six, a side that deliberately invited elite opponents to press them inside their own box, only to slice through that press with lightning one-touch combinations and a double pivot that would hide directly in the blind spots of opposing midfielders. Brighton became must-watch television for neutral fans and an absolute nightmare for the sides who considered themselves superior. De Zerbi guided the club to its highest ever Premier League finish, 6th place, secured European qualification for the first time in the club's history, and took Brighton to an FA Cup semi-final in 2023. It cemented his reputation as one of the most sought-after young coaches on the continent. That reputation took him to Marseille in the summer of 2024, and it's here that De Zerbi's story took on a more openly ideological edge. He was explicit about why he'd taken the job, to challenge PSG's dominance in French football, a dominance he had publicly called power, a word he used with clear distaste. In his 1 full season in charge, Marseille finished 2nd in Ligue 1, briefly became the highest-scoring domestic side in the country, and produced arguably the defining moment of De Zerbi's Marseille tenure in September 2025, a 1-0 win over PSG at the Stade Vélodrome that snapped a long home losing run against their fiercest rivals. But the fairy tale didn't last. Inconsistent form, a disappointing Champions League campaign, and a heavy 5-0 defeat led to his departure by mutual consent in February 2026, leaving him a free agent right at the moment Tottenham needed him most. Now De Zerbi is back in the Premier League, and this time Tottenham aren't asking him to survive, they're asking him to build. And the scale of the club's ambition in the transfer market this summer has been almost unrecognizable from the Tottenham of old. In the space of 24 hours in early July, Spurs broke their transfer record twice. First came Mateus Fernandes, the 21-year-old Portuguese midfielder signed from a relegated West Ham United for £85 million, beating out interest from Manchester United in the process. Fernandes didn't hide why he chose Tottenham over a bigger, more established rival. He said he spoke with the manager and that De Zerbi was the main reason he joined, adding that the ambition at the club is now to fight for the Premier League and fight for first place. A day later, Spurs smashed that record again, agreeing a deal worth up to £100 million for Newcastle United's Sandro Tonali, £92.5 million guaranteed plus $7.5 million in achievable add-ons, seeing off interest from Manchester City and Real Madrid, who were reportedly offering more money and wages. Tonali described the decision as feeling like magic the moment he spoke with De Zerbi about the project. Tottenham also moved to shore up the position that had haunted them throughout their relegation battle, signing centre-back Paul van Hecke from Brighton for £52 million, his 3rd bid finally accepted after 2 rejections, reuniting him with the manager who first coached them on the South Coast. Combined, the Tonali, Fernandes, and Van Hecke deals alone total roughly £237 million, or around €277 million, an amount that would have been unthinkable at Tottenham even 12 months ago. But the summer rebuild goes well beyond the headline fees. De Zerbi also brought in Andy Robertson on a free transfer from Liverpool, adding a title-winning left-back with genuine Premier League pedigree, alongside Marco Senesi on a free from Bournemouth, and goalkeeper Martin Dubravka also arriving on a free transfer to provide competition and cover. Out the door, meanwhile, went the players who didn't fit the new project. Yves Bissouma was released, Alejo Vélez was sold to Bahia, Radu Dragusin left on loan to Fiorentina, and highly rated young defender Luka Vuskovic was sold to Brighton for £50 million. It's a squad being surgically reshaped, position by position, around De Zerbi's demands. And those demands are considerable. De Zerbi's football requires players comfortable receiving the ball under suffocating pressure in their own third, midfielders capable of manipulating an opponent's shape with their positioning alone, and forwards sharp enough to punish a mistimed press in a single pass. That's exactly the profile Fernandes and Tonali offer. Two ball-progressing central midfielders capable of dropping into that double pivot De Zerbi has relied on at every club he's managed, baiting the press before releasing runners in behind. Van Hecke, similarly, isn't just a defensive reinforcement. He's a center-back who has already proven under De Zerbi at Brighton that he can play out from the back under extreme pressure without panicking, something Tottenham desperately lacked during their relegation fight, where individual defensive errors repeatedly cost them points in the run-in. It's also worth remembering that De Zerbi isn't starting entirely from scratch. He inherits a squad that, for all its defensive frailties last season, still contains genuine Premier League quality. Mickey van de Ven remains one of the league's quickest and most progressive center-backs when fit, and he'll now have a like-minded, ball-playing partner in Van Hecke, rather than being asked to cover for a shakier partnership. Vicario, despite a mixed campaign, is still a goalkeeper comfortable enough on the ball to play the sweeper-keeper role De Zerbi's system leans on so heavily. Further forward, De Zerbi inherits James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski, two creative players whose ability to find pockets of space between the lines fits neatly into a system designed to exploit exactly that kind of disorganization, assuming both can stay fit after injury-hit campaigns. João Palhinha, the very man whose goals secured survival last season, gives De Zerbi a physical, ball-winning presence that can sit alongside Tonali or Fernandes in midfield rotations, while Dominic Solanke and Richarlison offer contrasting profiles up front to finish the chances a press-baiting system is designed to manufacture. The question, as it is always with De Zerbi, is whether his players can execute a system this demanding under real pressure, not just in preseason friendlies against MK Dons and Auckland FC. His football asks defenders to make split-second decisions with an opponent bearing down on them, rather than clearing the danger, and a single miscontrol can turn a calculated risk into a costly individual mistake, exactly the kind of error that so nearly sent Tottenham down last season. That tension between De Zerbi's principle of controlled chaos and the Tottenham squad still rebuilding its confidence will likely define the opening months of the campaign. But if Fernandes and Tonali can dictate matches from deep the way they were signed to do, and if Van Hecke brings the calmness on the ball that Kevin Danso and company lacked during the run-in, Tottenham have assembled the raw materials to be one of the most watchable and most dangerous sides in the Premier League this season. Early signs from preseason have been genuinely promising. Spurs opened their preparations with a narrow but composed 1-0 win over MK Dons, Fernandes marking his first outing in a Tottenham shirt with a stunning long-range volley. They followed that with a 2-0 win over Auckland FC in New Zealand, a penalty shootout win over Sydney FC after a 1-1 draw, and a 2-1 victory over London rivals Chelsea to complete an unbeaten start to their Australia and New Zealand tour. It's only preseason, and De Zerbi himself has been careful to frame the tour as being about conditioning and injury prevention rather than results. But the early glimpses of Fernandes and Tonali dictating tempo through midfield and Van Hecke stepping calmly out from the back hint at exactly the identity De Zerbi is trying to instill before a ball is kicked in anger. The scale of what Tottenham are attempting shouldn't be understated. This is a club that finished 17th in back-to-back seasons, that lost 6 league games in a row, that needed a final day escape act just to remain in the Premier League at all. Now they've handed the project to a manager whose entire footballing philosophy is built on courage under pressure, on refusing to play the percentage game even against the very best sides in Europe. The same approach that once had Marseille players believing they could end PSG's era of dominance in French football. Whether that same fearlessness can be transplanted into a Tottenham side still shaking off the trauma of a genuine relegation scare remains to be seen. Spurs open their 2026-27 Premier League campaign away at Brentford on Saturday the 22nd of August, and from there, the true test of this rebuild begins. But with the record-breaking business this club has done and the manager they've entrusted to make it work, one thing already feels certain. This is not the same Tottenham anymore.